Welcome to the Redefining Sales podcast. I'm your host, Abby White. Today we have the most incredible guest. We've got Kat Warboys with us. Kat is a senior marketing director at Hubspot and looks after the APAC region. She's been with Hubspot for nearly 8 years and brings so many fresh perspectives on all things growth, sales, marketing, RevOps, you name it. In this conversation, we unpack her trends and predictions for 2024, her thoughts on AI, her non-negotiables with her marketing budget, and how HubSpot stay ahead of the curve. It is a really, really fascinating conversation with an enormous amount of gold. So be sure to make sure you've got a notepad and pen, because I certainly took an enormous amount of notes in this conversation. Welcome to the Redefining Sales podcast. We have got Kat Warboys with us from HubSpot. Kat, welcome to the podcast.
Hello, and thank you so much for having me. Very excited to have a chat today.
So I want to start out, time of recording, we've just all come back from our Christmas holidays. Everyone's thinking 2024, what we're doing. So I want to sort of get your view of the world of what do you think is going to be big from a marketing lens in 2024?
Oh, so much, in all honesty. I think it's going to be a big year. I think it's really exciting for marketers. I think the world is your oyster. Lots to think about, lots to solve for, lots of bets to take, mistakes to make, I'm sure. But, it's going to be a big, big year for marketers. Look, I would probably be a disappointment or coming across tone deaf if I didn't answer AI straight up with that one. It's obviously key. We saw a huge movement in 2023. I do think we saw a lot of people sort of dabbling with AI. You get a lot of your early adopters like you do with most technology trends. I think 2024 will be the year that it becomes a lot more mainstream, that we're starting to figure out how to incorporate it into our daily workflows, how we are thinking about it from a productivity gain, both in results. We can talk to this in a bit if you like in more detail, but also efficiency in our teams. So I think that's going to be absolutely key. We can go back on that one, but wanted to get that one out of the way pretty quickly. I think another big trend that we as marketers need to be really aware of and to even get ahead of in our planning for this year is the big switch off. The big switch off is really a signal from consumers that we as brands are kind of missing the mark when it comes to our content. So we last year launched a report called our Connected Customer Report. And it really took a look, quite a deep dive, both into a B2B and a B2C consumer's perspective on how are our brand experiences? How are companies doing when it comes to connecting with their customers, solving for their needs? And what we found is that, well, unfortunately, many brands and consumers feel like they're having terrible brand experiences. But the number one reason behind these bad brand experiences was actually this feeling of being spammed by irrelevant marketing communications, which, as a marketer, is slightly horrifying to hear. We've got so much technology to access, data to access. The fact that we're still getting this wrong is a little bit concerning. But yeah, essentially, Australians really feel like they are being spammed by marketing. And in addition to that, about a third of those Australians are willing to walk away from a brand that they love due to annoying emails. So we are seeing very, very real world examples of this play out. So Kmart, for example, was recently fined $1.3 million, I believe, for sending unwanted emails to customers. Commonwealth Bank was hit with a record high of about $3.5 million for sending spam. And so we're really seeing this noise impacting consumers today, and consumers are frankly just switching off. So this is something I think I would encourage a lot of marketers to pay attention to. And there's a number of ways to think about this. I've certainly encouraged marketers to be familiar with their own data, their own strategies to see, are they seeing signs of this? We heard from Australians that a lot of the strategies that they used a year ago aren't as effective today. And I think this has created this behavior to just send more, right? Oh, we're not cutting through, try and send again, try and get through again. And it's making the issue worse. So it is a trend I can see, worsening this year if marketers don't get ahead of it.
Oh my gosh, I've got notes and notes already.
I thought I'd start off with the positive news,
Thanks for that. So I'm gonna come back to AI in a minute. If I sort of stick with the email piece at the moment, that it's such a hard balance, isn't it? Because I think there's that point of how do you leverage some of the technology that you spoke to around automation? How do you have that sort of, piece where, particularly for large businesses where you have got a massive amount of people to be able to communicate with, but you still want it to feel personalized? And there's just such a fine balance of, it's fine if you've got a handful of clients to communicate with them on that individual case-by-case basis, but for enormous databases, it's really, really hard. So how are you treading that balance of personalized versus automated and that juggling act?
I think there's almost something in what you said, the personalized versus automated. We actually don't want it to be one or the other. The two really need to merge. We need to be using the tools that we have to ensure that we are creating personalization at scale. And yes, it might be automated, but it should be a sign that we are using our data well, that we understand and know our audience very well, how they like to be communicated with, where they like to be communicated, what platform. I think in B2B, we're very, very guilty of over-relying on email. 2024, we need to start thinking a lot more like B2C brands, in my opinion. Leverage other channels, spread out your communications for the right type of communication, SMS, chat, social. These are all things in B2B we definitely need to be thinking more about. But yeah, to your point, we want to ensure that every outreach is personalized. Otherwise, people are walking away. And AI is going to be a massive solve in this space, so much so that potentially by the end of next year, personalization will no longer be an issue. It would have become so commoditized because of the technology that's so accessible and available to all brands to create those highly personalized experiences. So personalization is key. I think AI is the enabler.
I love your point around B2B need to think like B2C. That is something that we are seeing a lot of. The majority of our audience and clients do fall into B2B. And I 100% think that some of what we've become accustomed to in B2C, we're now, whether it's digital tools, whether it's instant response 24/7, we're just expecting it. Talk to me a little bit more about what you're seeing there.
Yeah, so many things. I think this is a really interesting topic, but I think essentially we've maintained in B2B this traditional view that is so archaic, it's so old, that when we are marketing in B2B, we're marketing to a company and it's very sterile and it's stale and it's a bit boring and we're not really thinking about the person that we're actually trying to market to. And it's one of the biggest mistakes that we're making in B2B. Everybody, regardless of what we're buying, who we're buying it for, wants to have a delightful experience. They want to feel recognized by the brand that they're engaging with, and they want to feel valued. And so I think there's so much we can take from the B2C world. A lot of that is around channel, where we show up. We've been doing this for a long time at Hubspot. And just as a really basic example, you would assume, you must market and advertise only on LinkedIn because that's where people do business. Facebook is one of our top social channels for paid advertising, as well as LinkedIn. People are not thinking, having these clear lines between when they're thinking about work and they're not thinking about work. And I think there's a real breakdown of that happening. And there's a lot we can learn from B2C, from the channels that we're using, even the playfulness. I think there's a real opportunity for B2B brands to cut through by really humanizing their brand. We're seeing a lot of evidence of this. I mean, a really classic textbook example is actually Xero made accounting look kind of cool. I had a lot of friends at the time who thought, maybe I should go into accounting because of Xero's brand, how playful they made it, how energetic it was. They really humanized it. And even last year, really starting to show up in channels that have been traditionally owned by B2C. They were a major sponsor of the Women's World Cup. Very, very unexpected play for a B2B company to do that level of brand marketing. So yeah, I think we've really got to take down those barriers and start seeing the similarities and not the differences in these two types of buyers that we're ultimately serving.
I completely agree. We are seeing exactly the same opportunity. I want to circle back with you on AI. AI is obviously the topic of the moment at the time of recording, and we're seeing a really interesting split between people who are in that testing phase, people who are almost overwhelmed and concerned about some of the security and, how do we use AI securely, and probably everything in between. So I guess for you, where are you seeing the user cases develop for AI in marketing at this stage that we're at? And what are some of the first steps for people who are kind of like, oh, geez, how do I keep up?
Yeah, it's a good point. I think on the keeping up piece, some data that we saw last year, some research we conducted last year found that at that point, 78% of marketers surveyed in Australia were already using AI, that they'd given it a go. But only about a third of them had found ways to incorporate it into their daily workflow. So I think it comes back to this, we see the hype, we're having a look, but clearly something's going wrong if we haven't worked out how to harness it on a day-to-day basis. And one of the key things people in the survey said they needed was more education on how to actually use the tools. Like, how do you prompt AI to give you the result that you're looking for? So chances are, especially in the very early days, it's come a long way since, people might have given it a go and not been too overly impressed at how AI got it right for them. Did it produce the exact level of result or response that we were looking for? So there are training materials out there on how, best to prompt AI to get the result that you want. I think that's the big starting point, because once we can get that right and see what it can do for us, I think the rest starts to flow from them, a bit of a snowball on that momentum. But yeah, the use cases for those that feel like they've actually mastered it are really using it around text generation, so blogs and email, visual AI, so imagery, also the tools that I think many marketers are seeing AI come into are things like our chatbots and even audio AI. So these are some of the top use cases that we saw from the respondents using it.
I agree with you we were playing around with all the usual suspects like ChatGPT and all the usual things. And there were sort of mixed opinions in the team. And we actually went and we got someone to do some enablement for us and actually learn how to use it properly. And all of us were like, we've not been putting in the right prompts. We've not been, using it correctly. We didn't know about, this or that. And so we found actually there was that enablement gap as well, rather than just leaving us all to self-serve and play, because we were all doing it to varying degrees of success.
Yeah, absolutely. And, I don't think it's a bad thing at all. In fact, I would encourage that you're not completely handing over the keys to AI. If let's use the case of creating blog content, you still want to be validating that content after. Our own blogging team will use AI to come up with some topic ideas. There may be some headlines and then some core paragraphs of what they might cover. We're still then going over that with real people to make sure our brand is injected. That's one thing AI may struggle to do well. And it does raise one of the biggest challenges or blockers or things that comes up a lot with AI is everything just going to look and feel the same? Is there going to be much differentiation between brands? And I think it's a particularly exciting time for brand marketers and creatives. We're really going to need these people to come in and make sure that we are still thinking creatively with anything that we're producing at the level, at the content level, really filling that part in. And so that working with AI becomes very complementary, essentially. Coming back to the use cases, we're certainly seeing the bulk of those use cases be in that productivity space. So saving me time to get most of the way there with my content or generate ideas. I think it was something like our marketers in our survey said that it's saving them up to 2 days per week for those that feel like they've mastered it, which is massive. That's a lot of time back. And that's exciting. We can start to then look on more strategic areas of the business that we can have impact in once we start to automate some of those sort of manual tasks that make sense to outsource a little bit to AI. The use case we don't hear a lot about that I'm in my role seeing, when I'm speaking to customers and we're doing our data, it is a lot around that Gen AI, creating content and things. Still think we've got a little bit of a way to go in marketing to start using AI to really accelerate our growth. So what I mean by that is particularly in the space of paid marketing, AI stands because of how personalized it can get, right? We're really going to see improved metrics. We're going to see us be able to reach the right buyer at the right time at levels we've never seen before. And so we may start to see maybe less volume, but that volume coming through for marketers is going to be so much higher. It's going to be sales ready and hopefully some cost efficiencies off the back of that. But I think this is kind of like hopefully where we'll see a little bit more mainstream use cases coming in the marketing space for Australia this year.
I love that. And I totally agree. So I have to ask you back to our original question around 2024 trends. There's always, every year, I feel like there's a wild card. And there's something really, some new social media platform or something quirky that people are keeping their eye on to see if it's the next big thing. Are there any wild cards that you're keeping your eye on?
I think all the seeing are going to require us to hit refresh on our strategies and pivot. I think if there's a new wildcard coming out, are we ready? Are we prepared for that? I think there's some I think the jury's still out on a few things that came out last year. Threads. I don't know. Are we loving it? Are we not? From my perspective, the idea behind Threads was a very good one. They admittedly open. It was a bit of a competitor play against X. But the whole rationale was what Instagram does very well is encourage that social sharing, like incredible platform to share ideas, to connect, building communities, but they do it through visuals and video. They wanted to create that through text. When I go into Threads, and I can't say I'm a huge adopter of it, I'm still seeing marketers use Threads like they would use Instagram. It's often starting off just with the post of an image or a video like you would on the main platform. And so I think we've got to wait and see how some of the things that rolled out this year are still to play out. Threads is one of them. I really hope we don't see, this is a personal point of view here, but I hope I don't see AI influencers become the norm. I think that goes against the whole idea of, why we like influencers as consumers. They are we see them as trustworthy. They are great brand advocates at the best of times, but they tend to be very separate to the brand. And we see them as a real sort of sign of trust when we engage with influencers or content creators. I think we start seeing AI generated, and there's another barrier or challenge with AI in general is around this trust factor. Is it going to see trust erode or improve is, I think, a big question mark around this.
Yeah, I'm with you on that one. So I'll personally agree with you on that one as well. I want to talk about marketing budgets and getting an ROI, because even already in what we've talked about, in the few minutes we've been going, already it's like as marketers, there is the demand of, okay, what are you doing around socials? What are you doing around content? What are you doing around lead generation? What are you doing around your brand? All these different things we've already spoken about. And so you're kind of being pulled in all different directions. From your viewpoint, how do you maximize where you are going to spend your marketing budget when you've probably got, a lot of people screaming at you in different areas?
Yeah, definitely. And I think the big debate the big topic we typically have around this conversation is, brand versus demand, for example, and how do we think about that? That's a big polarizing conversation when we think about our budgets and where we're going to put the majority of our investments. I think going forward, we have a lot of opportunity. Well, actually, I'll start with the demand generation side of things. My advice there would be, and because when I ask this to some marketers, they don't always know the answer to this question, but what does good look like, first of all? Are we a business that understands how much demand our sales team require and what that looks like, down to the number? How many leads have we got to generate? How many qualified leads from that? So first of all, what does good look like? Because we can keep going on a demand generation activity and not necessarily use it. We see a lot of wastage when people don't have goals and what actually sales need to hit it. So really encourage people to understand what good looks like. We typically see this created through an SLA, so service level agreement, which is a process of working out sales targets and the leads that marketing need to generate in order for sales to hit that target. So first of all, what does good look like? And then we can really work backwards from there. I think from a demand generation perspective, there's a lot of testing, there's a lot of iterating into the channels that are performing or creating some of the highest ROI for us. So really leaning into our data when we're testing. And this changes a lot. Our strategies need to be as dynamic as the trends and environment that we're operating in. So what may have worked last year may be dwindling in results for us, this year. And that is something we're certainly hearing from marketers, that strategies that were once effective aren't anymore. So we need to be continuously referencing our data, checking in on performance metrics and management. Again, AI is going to help a lot here. I touched on this earlier, how I think with the increased level of personalization, we're going to see much better conversion rates. This should translate into better cost efficiency from demand generating activities. I think this is exciting because it does open up more conversations and more room for some of those sometimes harder to get investments around, say, brand and awareness marketing. And as we've said before, if 2024 is going to be the year where B2B really needs to think more like B2C, I think we need B2B brands to get really good at brand marketing, to get really thoughtful about where they show up, what awareness plays, what stories they're telling, to be differentiated in kind of this, battle that we've got to make sure we're still having cut through and having a differentiated point of view in our content compared to a lot of our competitors. So yeah, I guess in short, I think ROI, I'm very optimistic that AI is going to help us here as marketers. And this is where we're going to need more skills of your kind of brand and creative marketers to come in and really be thinking about how do we address the rest of our audience? How do we think about social discovery, and what are those channels that are, really working for us? We actually did an online survey on social media, and this is pretty in line with what we feel. We're pretty bullish about video at HubSpot, and this is something we're seeing really, really good signs around. And similar to our customers, when we research this, short form video seems to be the highest performing ROI when it comes to social media marketing. So I think we're definitely going to be seeing a lot more of that next year, particularly from HubSpot, but also, from what our customers are telling us.
That is really, really, really eye-opening. So you talked about demand gen quite a bit there. And I think the number one question that all of us get asked is, what's working? What's not? You mentioned earlier on around staying away from spammy emails and just mass, outreach by sort of cold email and leveraging other platforms. Can you expand on that a little bit, what you're seeing working around demand gen at the moment?
Yeah, absolutely. There are a couple of specific channels that definitely have won my heart over the years for how effective they are at this, and also still so much opportunity for brands to leverage because not many are. So those channels include chatbots. I still am so disappointed when I go to a site, doesn't matter B2B, B2C, and I do not see chat enabled. This is such a missed opportunity. If you think about when you are top of mind for somebody and they come to your site with questions, if the only way for them to get in touch with you is a form where you've set the expectation that somebody will get back to them in 24 plus hours, you are really missing out on an opportunity here. And as B2B brands, if we think about what B2C do really well, they enable that quick response, open any, hour of the day, 24/7. They make it easy. They really take the friction out of the process for somebody to get in touch. And I think when we think about lead generation, once we have got somebody's sort of attention and they're wanting to learn more or get in touch, chat offers an incredible channel for them to be able to do this. It's something we can scale. It's something we can personalize. Very, very effective at lead gen level. I think something else I'd encourage marketers to think about is their lead gen magnets, right? So what are we using to attract people in the first place? HubSpot is pretty famous for coining the term inbound marketing, which is really all about how you attract your audience to you. And we believe the best way to do that is through adding value before you extract it. Now, back in the day, this really started out with those traditional content offers, right? So the downloadable reports or templates, which is fantastic. The idea of this is really evolved, and there are many ways to think about inbound for your lead generation and the type of value that you are making accessible to an audience to convert on. Things like tools. HubSpot created the website grader, which was a way for people to put in a few details and get a result back on how their website performed. That's a tool. Another example is education. HubSpot created, and I'm giving lots of HubSpot examples here, sorry, just to show we really practice what we preach. But on the educational standpoint, the HubSpot Academy is exactly how we do that. A lot of free educational content from, short form snippets of how to create a social media campaign all the way through to long form certifications around social media. So these are, education being an offer there. I think the most powerful ones we've seen in recent years from a sort of lead gen magnet is freemium-led growth. This works obviously particularly well in SaaS, and we've seen an explosion of companies providing some of those, free accounts, everything from, Dropbox to HubSpot, but also Netflix or Stan, being able to try before you buy. So massive, massive lead offer if you can make that work for your business. And I think the last one that we're going to see continue a lot this year is community. How are we attracting people to us by building a sense of common interest and enabling people to connect? That's something we're going to have to work out as we lean more into AI, is where do we also lean into the human elements of what we offer at our brand? I think you're going to see, and we've seen a lot of this in 2023, but more so in 2024, the idea of community, mostly in person. It seems to be what we're seeing people want, what we're hearing about a lot. So yeah, think about what are those lead magnets? If you're still relying on a free infographic or a downloadable report, you probably really want to evolve what is more commonplace today and what's really adding more value.
Yeah, that's really fascinating. I love the free tools. We find for a lot of IT companies we work with, things like an assessment, a health check, things like that.
Yes.
You know, because you're giving value before that person's made a commitment. You're almost showcasing some of your expertise.
100%, 100%. And I think this is what people are looking, when they do come to your brand, they are really looking to see, you know, how are you positioned against your competitor? Are you going to be the better choice at the end of the day? And I think any opportunity to display that you're a thought leader in this space, that you're already showcasing some of the value that you can deliver is probably one of the best ways to think about lead generation that's going to convert at the highest rate possible for you.
So for you, when you're having to invest in all these different areas, you know, we talked about brand, talked about demand gen, you know, it sounds like your plate's pretty full. I'm kind of impressed at this point in time. You've got time in your diary. So you've highlighted so many demands that you've got a very big and demanding role, whether it's talking about that demand gen, it's talking about some of the brand building, the community. You've talked about so many different facets there. For you, is there an area that's a non-negotiable that, you know, when you're under the pump, you've got your team asking for budget in all different directions, it's really where you're going to prioritize some of your resources, time, effort, budget?
Yeah, absolutely. Very, very clear on what this looks like for us. So, you know, as a reminder or for context, you know, my role is very much a regional role. And so I view that as my main responsibility, and the responsibility of my team is to make sure that we are here supporting our local customers. And so this year, we definitely touched on this on 2023, but really leaning into non-negotiable is how we're here to support our existing customers. Right now, being a customer platform ourselves, this space is moving incredibly fast. People are really battling with the technology, with the trends in both marketing and sales and customer success. There's a lot going on, and I really see our job here is to help guide our customers through this. So, you know, from my local team perspective, customer marketing is massive for us. We want to be there for our customers. We want to make sure we're bringing them together. So this sense of community is something we're really focused on this year, bringing together our customers in person to talk about, navigate, ideate on the ways forward, to share learnings, to share use cases, is a really big focus for us this year. And we're certainly not alone in this. I really noticed last year, just anecdotally through conversations with you know, marketers, our customers, is there was a big shift with Australian marketers really going from, it's all about lead generation. How do I fill my funnel with more? And actually, how am I thinking about and taking care of my existing customers? And this is a real shift. You know, I think for a long time in this industry, we've talked about, and there's always that stat or that saying that goes around that it's cheaper and easier to resell to an existing customer than it is to acquire a new one. We know this logically, but for some reason last year, I feel like marketers really decided to start focusing on their existing customers. And the opportunity here is massive when we think about how we're delivering value to our audience beyond just that first purchase. How are we being helpful? How are we enabling them to get more and continuous value out of our product or out of our service? So I feel like this is a trend that's definitely going to continue into 2024 and a big focus for my team here.
I agree with that. We see a lot of customers put companies in a box and go, right, you do this. You know, whether it's Hubspot, right, you do a CRM and that's it, and no awareness of some of the other ways that you can support their journey, some of the other things that you can do. And so we found there's so much opportunity and almost that re-education and expanding people's understanding of how you can help. And pretty much all clients we've worked with around that strategy, it's been so powerful. And we've even had it ourselves. People are like, oh, I didn't realize you do sales enablement. It's pretty much all I talk about. but people have in one warp of life or one of our service offerings, and you know, It wasn't for mind, it wasn't relevant, and so they've not considered it in another context.
Yeah, I think people are really waking up to the opportunity that exists with their current customers, whether that's expanding to the other areas of your product or service offering, whether it's helping them get more value over the long term and really like focus on retention. There's a lot there, and when we start to dissect it, it's like, okay, well, when we think about net new prospective buyers, we've got that whole marketing and sales handoff. Well, how about that customer success to sales team handoff for our existing customers? What does that workflow need to look like? At what points do our customers, is there signs in our data that they need help? When's there a red flag that they might not be getting as much value from us as they could be? And so, we really start to replicate that whole process for our net new buyers into the customer world. And it gets really exciting. So much opportunity to improve that experience for customers. Really sits there.
So on that note of existing HubSpot customers, quite a few of the clients we work with are lovely HubSpot customers. And sort of something that I think is a really interesting point is, how do you get the most out of your investment? And I speak for myself in this as well, that a lot of the time we might, buy a Ferrari and we only use a certain portion of the capability. Is there any themes, I guess, around HubSpot users, what you see them doing really, really well to maximize their investment, get an ROI, really see it helping drive the growth of their business that others can learn from?
Yes, many things in that, and love that you deal with a lot of HubSpot customers. It's amazing to hear. It's not uncommon. We've become a really large platform. We started out as a marketing automation solution. Today we're a customer platform. We have solutions for both your customer facing teams, which we refer to as your flywheel teams. So that's marketing, sales, and customer success, as well as revenue operations. So I don't think there's an expectation that customers come all in on that first go, because we have really expanded into a big product. However, there is a lot of power when all of those teams are on that same platform and we think about our data and our system management. So I think, it's actually probably very realistic for a business to start out with just one of those functions. When you start up with a new solution, you want to make sure that you have a change management plan for that team, that you're ready for the change that will come with. And so that's one thing I definitely recommend. You want a set of power users who are going to really drive the adoption for that forward internally and report progress back to the business. Once we do that, we see a lot of customers then keen to understand how we support the rest of their organization. And there's a lot of merit in one thing that we saw a lot of last year was this whole tech stack consolidation process, right? As a result of COVID, so many solutions came onto the market as so many businesses had to digitalize. So you would have a separate tool for social media, you'd have a separate tool for your customer success, ticketing process. And that has caused a lot of time spent for your teams in managing, maintaining, connecting all of those systems and trying to get them to work for you. And so this is something that I feel like really resonates quite well with customers as they learn that actually we're bringing leads into the marketing solution. Wouldn't it be amazing if we can hand off to sales in that same solution? And then that customer success can then support those customers in that same solution. So that's something that appeals a lot to our customers as they think about growing their experience and their usage with HubSpot is really great. Once we stop solving just for marketing or just for the sales team, what can we actually see when we're solving for all of those customers facing teams, and what impact is that having on our customer experience? So it's something that we see a journey a lot of our customers go through. I think in terms of general success with the platform, I would add, don't do it alone. We've got such a great community of HubSpot customers, many events that bring us all together to learn from one another, communities that are probably, asking the same questions that you are and how to achieve something. So yeah, really sort of getting stuck into the community of users that we have as well.
Fantastic. What really resonates with me about what you just talked about as well was actually how you're bringing revenue generating teams together. And there's sort of a couple components for that for me. The first one I want to tap into is several times you've talked about handing off between marketing to sales. And it's really ignited something for me because I see this as a massive area of opportunity. I believe it was HubSpot that coined the term smarketing. That is one of my favorite words that I use pretty much every single day. And I do believe everything should be smarketing. It should be really seamless.
Yeah.
How do you guys approach that?
Yeah, there's a couple of ways. One is kind of like our approach to how we set up the organizations at HubSpot. And then I think there's a lot of tactical things that the team do to make sure that kind of plays out on the ground. So I'll speak to both. The first one is really how we structure these different teams up for success. And so just kind of zooming out a little bit, yes, it's marketing, yes, it's sales, but it's also that customer success team. So as I said, we have this idea of the flywheel, which is all of these teams rallied around the customer. It really kind of goes against the old marketing and sales funnel, which has this unfortunate leak at the bottom of the funnel, which is your customers most of the time. And so the flywheel was really kind of our way of addressing this issue and really making sure we were thinking about the customer in whatever endeavor our teams were kind of doing. A big part of this was Yamini Rangan, who is now our CEO, but she came on board as our Chief Customer Officer. She saw the need for alignment across these teams, marketing, sales, but also customer success. And she actually brought them all in under her. So all of those teams reporting to one leader. That was absolutely transformational. And her role was Chief Customer Officer at the time. It makes sense that she would own all these teams, but the roll down there of the strategy, the alignment, the foundations that were really set for these functions to collaborate around the same initiatives was just absolutely huge for the business. So I think, are your teams foundationally set up to be aligned? How does our organization set up look is a really, really important point I would touch there. But that's not everything. We also need our teams, to interact and collaborate with one another on a daily basis. So particularly for sales and marketing, when we think about bringing on net new business, we are extremely collaborative with our sales team. And when I say we, I'm definitely speaking on behalf of my marketers in this region, but they are very much a partnership. So much to the point that we run a series of meetings that are called the Pipeline Council. And this really brings in the sales managers into the process of how we create campaigns, how we create our content. Is this what you're seeing? Is this what you're hearing from prospects? Is this going to, hit the nail for you? Are your teams ready to lean more into this product? Or actually, do we need to do a bit of training and we should maybe focus on something else? And so it's such a simple trick, but it has been transformational in getting sales on board to make sure that they are bought into what marketing teams are doing. And it has meant that our campaigns are more successful because the sales teams are invested, they feel like they're a part of it, and we're all working together. Such a simple shift, but I can't emphasize how transformational that has been for our teams.
We've likewise seen the absolute same. It's that day one, are you on the same page? And we're finding a lot of the time when you bring sales and marketing together, it's like, oh, it's the first time we've done this in ages, or the first time we've done it ever. So it sounds obvious, but it's not obvious. And like you said, by collaborating together, we've identified, actually, sales team aren't paid on that. They're not going to get any commission on that, so they're not going to care. Or like you said, they're not confident selling it because it's a new solution. They've not wrapped their head around it, or they've not even got the bandwidth to follow up on these leads. So don't even bother because they won't follow up because they're just too smashed right now. And it's just such a foundation for success on any ongoing engagement.
Everything you touched on, it's so true. We think we know, we think we understand the sales team and their world and what's going on, and we just don't. And things change fast for them. And I think the more that we're looped in, we can make sure we're not giving them things that are actually just kind of interrupting their day and their process and are actually adding to it and providing value for them. And so, yeah, that's been really, really key for us from that kind of sales and marketing perspective.
And in terms of bringing together revenue generating teams, because you touched on that as well, which I love. And I believe HubSpot went down a RevOps model and, like you said, restructured to bring people sort of together into alignment from an organizational perspective.
Yeah, that's right. It wasn't just marketing, sales, and customer success that reported to our chief customer officer. It was also revenue operations. We need those fundamental teams that, touch the customer at various points across their journey. But RevOps is really the enabler. It really gives us the insights of what goals we should be focusing on, how we're measuring. Does that line up across marketing and sales? And so RevOps have been extremely important to that. As a team, when we start to lean into Rev operations, we see so many benefits. We see better discussions, better decision-making, after all, because we have foundational metrics of what success looks like. We all know that we have to solve for the customer, which is a particular HubSpot value of ours. We see improved customer dollar retention. We see that we're better able to scale personalization because, again, we're thinking about it across the journey, not just for marketing or not just for sales. So RevOps really are the unsung hero in our flywheel, I feel. They really do sort of provide the catalyst for the conversations. We use a lot of the data that RevOps helps us with in a meeting that we call CCOM. It's our customer-centric operating model. And this is where the leaders of those pillars, so again, marketing, sales, and customer success, come together and report on metrics. And it really helps us to see, okay, customer retention seems to have taken a dip as an example. Like, what are we seeing in sales? Oh, okay, we haven't actually created as many opportunities for expansion within our existing customer base. Marketing, have we had any product enablement recently for customers? It really helps you kind of fit all the pieces of what might be happening, identify and prescribe solutions for some of the things that we might be seeing happening. So, yeah.
I think one thing that's really come through for me in this discussion is how much you guys are really setting the pace and you're staying ahead. And, it's really, really, really impressive what you guys are practicing and what you're preaching. For you, how do you enable your team? We've already given so many examples of where change is just so quick. How do you enable?
Yes. I'll give a short answer here, which is different for me. I normally ramble a bit, but honestly, you need to provide autonomy and trust for teams to do their best work. At this point where we're at in marketing, we need new ideas. We need to challenge how we go to market. We need to do things differently. And so if teams don't feel like they can put those ideas forward, that they can shape our strategies, we're never going to get there. And so really think about, the language as a leader that you use every day. Are you asking the right questions of your team? Simple questions like, well, how would you do that? Or what do you think we're missing? Or where do you think the gap was on that? Like, ask these questions and really understand what the team are seeing from their level. I think that's really important. And then I guess on the allowing sort of the autonomy or the ability to shape what we're doing and the strategy, there's so many ways of doing this. One of my favorite ones is something we do every year in my team, which is called our big bet concept. So at the end of each year, we do our planning for the following year, and big bets are essentially an opportunity for each member of the team to be able to pitch a big, scary, ambitious idea. It could be a campaign, it could be a program, it could be a completely different audience that we should be paying attention to. Whatever it might be, it's an opportunity for them to really come to the table, definitely with some context, with some rationale and some data to back those ideas, but really to put forward what they think we should be doing and what's going to be impactful for the business. So this has really become a staple in our planning. And while that's fantastic, I definitely recognize once a year is not enough. So again, like, how are we checking in with the team regularly to ask them what their ideas are? What would they do differently? What are we missing a trick on? And allowing, I guess, the space to test for trial and error, and to get things wrong as well from time to time. Of course, that's going to happen. So yeah, creating teams that have that autonomy and trust is going to be key as this space continues to evolve at the rate that it is.
And do you look at continuous learning for your team to keep up with the latest thing and the latest thing and the latest thing? Because it's almost like it used to be, are you doing enablement once a year, or whether you're doing it twice a year or something like that. But at the pace it's going right now, it almost feels like it's not enough. So do you look at continuous learning?
Yeah, we absolutely do. Hubspot is very educational first in its culture. We have a saying, always be learning. So we do really encourage our employees to take that time. So we have everything from tuition reimbursements, unlimited leave for people that want to take time out to maybe upskill or invest in their career development, are really common ways that we see teams leveraging some of these benefits. A lot of it is, that on the job learning. I 100% believe in that. And so that's where I think the most power actually comes from testing and iterating and sharing those learnings. We have a fantastic system internally for sharing our learnings with other marketers across the globe. We operate in many different regions, and we are constantly trying to share with those teams what our learnings are. We often see teams become mentors for other members of teams that have done something really well. So I think that is a big part of our culture and something that we celebrate and are going to have to play even greater emphasis to in the next year.
Well, your journey is very, very, very inspirational. I really absolutely love hearing about it. And thank you so much for unpacking it with us and being so generous with your knowledge there. If our audience want to connect with yourself or HubSpot, you also talked about quite a few resources. So you talked about the Connected Experience report and several other reports. I know you've got an AI report. I love all of them. Where are people best to connect with yourself and HubSpot and those resources?
Yeah, a lot of those resources you will find on hubspot.com/APAC. This is a hub of resources and content specifically for marketers in the Asia Pacific region. So you'll see all the trends and news that is relevant to you in your market. With myself, I'm pretty sure I'm the only Kat Warboys on LinkedIn. That's the benefit of having a slightly unusual surname. So you should find me pretty quickly if you're keen to connect, and I'd love to hear from you.
Amazing. We will also put a link in the show notes, just in doubt if there happens to be a second one popped up and you've got a twin sister we're not aware of. Kat, thank you so much for your time and sharing with us. I've really, really loved having you on. Thank you.
My pleasure. Thank you.
If you enjoyed that conversation with Kat, you can access the resources that she discussed and also the link to connect with her in our show notes. Now, before you leave us, what you might not know is that we actually introduced a free layer of our Rev Up membership. Rev Up, if you haven't heard, is where we bring together revenue generating teams, sales, marketing, pre-sales, and so on to all learn from the most epic lineup of experts. So there is a free level of community that you can start to access some of those experts, some of those resources, and a private LinkedIn group. So check out the link in our show notes if you would like to be part of our Rev Up community and access those resources.